Okay, so we're back. We're talking about relationships from Perspective for Life, and we've been having a series of sort of discussions on things, and they sort of flow into, one another. We've still got questions on your list. Yes. Where are we at? This is
so at the active listening. So,
sorry, what did you say?
Exactly.
Okay.
Pun not intended. So how do we develop active listening skills? Why you emphasize it? Why we're going to soon have a light that
yes,
actually
I'm
shines
waiting
on
for my light.
Yes,
it says
listen. Yes.
When I started in a clinic, I think it was around 2016, I was going into a new clinic, and I requested that behind the patient.
Oh, I made that poster.
Behind the patient, there was going to be a big sign that said listen,
and then speak in a very
small. And that was for me.
I know.
That was aimed very, very much at me, because I get excited when I hear sort of things. The things come together so quickly, in my thinking in terms of identifying, oh, that's a problem. So I tend to want to jump in, whereas I think I have over the years developed more of a skill within practice to be able to listen attentively. And I can tell you what sort of helped me with that. I need to understand. So if I'm committed to wanting to try and understand what it is this person's saying, what it is they're feeling, why they're feeling like that, I don't have to be preparing an answer. I don't have to be preparing a defense. I don't have to be structuring something that I immediately am going to come back at them with. In fact, what I want to say is I want to receive the information, because this is communication again. Communication is both delivery and how I receive something. So if I recognize I don't know it all, I recognize I'm not going to necessarily have all the information I need, and that gathering information is what allows me to genuinely understand this person, this situation better, and then be able to speak more meaningfully and helpfully to this particular situation. Well, how can I not but listen? So the inclination then is I'm inclined often now to want to listen, because I love to see how people think. I love to see how they've constructed this idea that has them feeling in a particular kind of way. Because oftentimes, again, we drop in an assumption here, or we leave a piece out here, or we, sort of inflate this particular piece. At the end of the day, the conclusion the person arrives at is what they think is real, which is why we come back to, that's how it seems to them. And if that's how it seems to them, that's how they're going to respond, or how they're going to deal with the situation. So if I can try and identify, why do they feel, or why does it seem like that? And that is only going to come through listening. So really, listening becomes so much more valuable to you when you recognize it's essential to genuinely.
But we say it's a skill. So why do we say it's a skill? It means
because it doesn't come naturally. I don't think it comes naturally. I think the natural tendency for each person is to want to share what they think.
It's even worse. I think it's even worse. It's almost giving me a permission to talk about myself. It's like, you're talking now, I'm going to kidnap completely and take it from me. And also there could be opportunity to take control. So
have you ever been in relationships or in conversations where, again, I had somebody say this to me 2 days ago. They were saying they were having a discussion about, a spouse, and they were saying that the ability the individual has to turn any subject back to themselves within seconds is like uncanny. I mean, you could be talking about who was on the moon when, and before you know it, they're talking about, something related to
I can somewhat relate, but I also find the pattern almost like a heritage from the childhood, somewhat.
What do you mean?
I know in my house I was not allowed to express my needs at all.
Okay.
And any opportunity to kidnap, to express was used. So there was and obviously you had to be forceful and loud. So I do know that for me, and whoever gained control of a conversation was winning. So early on you had to kind of take the wheel. So and so it was very clear. I mean, the pattern was so clear, at least later in my life I could see it. But we were by then in a heavy auto mode. It's actually, so no one was, you can't speak about your needs. You can't be too emotional because you're a victim, and then we don't like victim. You should be stoic about everything. But then every opportunity you had, someone starts about their vulnerability. It's like, oh, now, finally I have a permission about talk about myself. Wait until I tell you about me and my day and my feelings. It trumps yours 100 times. Yeah. And it's terrible because these people just started like, hello.
Yeah.
And then you take control of a conversation and you finally feel like I'm visible. Someone can pay attention to me. And it was such, but you're doing this completely unconsciously. You're almost not even aware of that you're doing this because you want all eyes on you finally, because they're never on you. Mm-hmm. Or you just finally get attention. You love it. And or maybe you have a loss. Maybe at one point in your life you had so much attention and you lost it and now you want it back. But I'm going to add something funny that I don't think you really think in line with us. But I do think we're mixing a lot of parent love with adult love a lot. It's unconditional, because parents really don't ask kids to take care of their needs. And we kind of get that into our adult relationship. We talk about only our needs. Mm-hmm. And you should be fulfilling my needs because, you love me. So and there's a mix-up. But going back on the listening skills, it's skills. So
to define skill.
How do we even define we're bad at it? That's one. So how do I know I'm good at it? That's two. And how do I actually jump from bad to good?
If you want to test yourself, I'd oftentimes go ahead and suggest this. And I actually recommend when the communication lines are severely damaged because of previous conflict and all the things that we've sort of discussed. One of the things that I recommend is when you've heard something, repeat it, summarize it, repeat it, and give it back to the person. So if I'm clear on what you're saying, this is where it's at. So you allow them to be able to acknowledge, yes, that's what I said. Okay, so if I've heard you well, now I can go ahead and try and respond more appropriately. So there are times when things are difficult in a relationship where I say you take many steps back in terms of the communication. For example, state the obvious. I should know. Doesn't matter. Cast the net super wide. State the obvious, whatever that might be. I love you, right? Yes. Okay. We're having a difficulty right now. Yes. The difficulty is because we don't think that, our daughter should be doing that. She shouldn't be doing that. Yes. And as you work through that, so you state the obvious, you then have the opportunity to agree, I'm trying to maintain a sort of a common ground here as we have the discussion. Well, think about it. That's obvious. If disagreement is what causes discord, then agreement is typically what brings us closer together in ease. Continually find the points of agreement. That's a lot easier to do when you listen well. That's a lot easier to do when you can listen and you can say, I can resonate that or with that. I will often try and again, it's not a technique. It's not a manipulation technique. I oftentimes want to make sure in the conversation that I'm having that I can say, to your point. In other words, what you said, I can totally agree with. I might disagree with you on a number of other things here, but that particular part, I think you're spot on. I can only say that if I've listened, and I know that level of agreement in a discussion is tremendously helpful to keep us on that highway of communication rather than going off on all these, sort of little off ramps into whatever else that we need to go ahead and recruit to fuel our argument or put this person down or discredit their position, whatever else it is. So all of these are things that we can go ahead and use to ensure that our communication is valuable. What's communication? I said it before, an exchange of information for a purpose. So if there's an exchange, best I receive what was intended. Listen, that came across to me in this way. Is that what you meant? I might ask that question. No, I didn't mean that. I might ask the person to say, is that how, this is how it sounds to me. This is how it seems to me. Is that what you intended to say?
Are you listening to the tone of voice as well?
You're naturally going to listen to the tone. In fact, oftentimes the body language and the tone.
So are you paying attention? Are listening skills also paying attention to the nonverbal?
I think that is part of the skill that you develop. I mean, if we could turn the person into no body language and turn it into a monotonous, monotone sort of conversation, then it's content only. Well, we don't live like that. There's no way we can do that. So oftentimes the way in which communicate, because we don't always have the vocabulary, is we communicate through the expression of how I feel about this. So there might be times when I might seem very stern, very to the point. I'm not angry. It's just that there's a level of clarity that we need to have here right now that that's my intention. My intention is this is what we need to do, and I'm not going to try and flower it, and I'm not going to try and, sort of make it sound pretty. Yeah, it's almost like, no, I mean, we'll save that for other things. Now, again, there aren't hard and fast rules here, but as a principle, I would say to you exactly what we're discussing, to be willing to listen, test yourself. Am I building an argument and picking up bits and pieces and filling in the gaps with assumptions?
So I can win?
Chuck that out the window. Would I be able to repeat what this person said to me?
And show more curiosity about it. Asking better questions, right? I'm guessing.
Because there's going to be gaps. That person is not going to communicate everything they feel or everything that's there.
So you're inviting conversation, right?
You're asking. Again, ask more than assume.
You're giving them space.
Give space, invite, make sure we're on the same page. Are we in agreement? Find all the bits and pieces in the conversation that you're agreeing on so that there is something solid that allows you then the freedom to explore a little bit more carefully and discuss rather than argue over the things that you don't seem to be on the same page on.
Which I think most of us just want to win and rather than understand.
Because we think we're right.
We already have a position.
We think we're right. Yeah, and as I said to you in one of the other videos,
the flag is already put. The land is
there it is. Whenever you join me,
exactly.
Agreement is easy. Just see it my way and we go.
I listen carefully. Go on this. Well, I think it's wonderful. Yes, reconfirming and almost now giving a sentence back that they feel, wow, yes, exactly, and rephrasing and giving a time for them to express themselves. That patience has to be practiced. I think reminding yourself, I need that poster, man. Needs to be like a really big poster.
Are we going to do one more question? How are we doing? I think, let me see here.
He's checking the time.
No, we definitely got room for one or two.
Okay. I'm trying to skip something that attaches. Okay, sorry. Can you check? Okay. No, I don't want that. Oh, wow, I'm stuck now. Managing intense emotions. What strategies do you have to manage intense emotions?
Okay, brilliant. So the first thing I should say is, well, what do you mean by intense?
Anger.
Okay, so now you're picking one.
I'm going to go anger, but I'm also could be ignoring, really. But yeah, usually intense is anger.
So if we talk emotions, in any of the conversations,
I'm restricting actually to one emotion.
Let's pick it with that one for the moment. What I love to try and do with people is I always try and make sure, again, that we're using terminology that we agree on. So, for example, when you walk into my consulting room, on the left-hand side, I have a picture of an apple with an orange slice that is taken out. My intention is the idea is, as with all good academic debate, let's first define our terms. Now, the idea is not to take discussion that we have in relationships and turn it into some sort of courtroom or debate scenario. The idea is let's understand or be clear we're talking about the same thing here, which is oftentimes a major, major problem. We think we're talking about the same things. We've got a completely different definition. We're completely seeing it from a different perspective. And we're arguing over something that if we had to step back, we might even realize, we actually don't have a difference here, right? It seems like we have a difference because of these things. So in that situation, what I think is helpful is, again, make sure that we're communicating with words that we understand we're using this, we mean the same thing. So when you say, what is an intense emotion? When I say to you, what do you mean by intense? Immediately it also indicates I heard you, right? I'm giving you the opportunity to clarify. Intense typically means, I would say, the kind of emotion that is so overwhelming that it's literally driving my response.
Yeah.
It's driving how I'm interpreting things. It's driving my response.
It kidnaps my brain space.
Which is what an emotion is intended to do. One of the things, and I unpack this completely in the emotions course, how to grow a genuinely good emotional intelligence in the emotions course, which is available in the school community for free. The idea there is, help me understand where my emotions are coming from.
True.
why I'm so emotional and why would this particular intense emotion be there. And it's usually related to something happened that caught me by surprise.
Essentially, we keep coming back to almost the same. Self-check.
100%.
What we do. So it's what we do most of the time. Intense emotion is actually doing something with the other person. But it's what you do with self. Self-check.
Be checking. You be responsible for you. So now here's the deal.
Amazing. Keep kind of an eye on yourself. Absolutely. What's happening with me? How do I feel? What's going on? Am I listening? Do I hear this person? What space am I giving here for anything actually the other person to come to get to that calm, collected? How do we reach that now? Where are we? I think a lot of this mind pit stops with this kind of observation position that we don't surrender at any point, even with emotions. So I'm really angry. Wow, I'm really angry.
Well, let's pick on anger because we can use it both for its intensity and its purpose. Anger is a corrective emotion.
Or sad, or super disappointed.
Let's focus on the anger. So anger is it's a corrective emotion is how I describe it. What do I mean by that?
True.
It's an attempt to express how unhappy I am with something, usually one of three things. I didn't get what I want. I didn't get what I'm entitled to, or things aren't as they should be. Those are the reasons we get angry. And the idea is, I need to fix that. The idea is that needs to be corrected either by me or by you. And if it needs to be corrected by you, I'm going to tell you how urgently you need to do this. So I'm going to express it through my language, my volume, my body language, what I throw, whatever it might be.
I also have expectation from that person to fix that.
Because I've expressed,
not even a choice.
Now I'm back to entitlement. I've now intensified things, so I am entitled for you now to put this first and deal with it as a matter of importance and urgency. So the intensity of the emotion, in my experience and with my understanding of what's happening in our thinking, intensity is usually directly related to the degree of unmet expectation. In other words, the more surprised I was, things didn't turn out the way that I thought, anticipated, hoped, the more my emotion distorts my perspective, because what's it trying to do? It's trying to push me to an action. So anger, again, is corrective in nature. You may have, anxiety, which is usually preventive in nature. So this is one where, I'm just completely overwhelmed. I'm leaving. And if I feel tremendously threatened and unprepared because it's caught me by surprise, I flee or I fight or I freeze, whatever it might be. The simple fact of the matter is emotions play a very, very important role in enriching life. But if we don't know how to understand them, we don't know what they're indicative of, we don't learn from them, decipher them, emotions provide an amazing opportunity to learn about what we really believe. And that's what the whole course is about that I put on, to the school community. The idea is if you can check your emotion, it offers a window into your perspective. And at the end of the day, I believe this so strongly, our drive, if we want to live life well, when I make the statement, keep it real, what I mean by that is we would do very, very well to try and make sure that as we are constructing perspective, which is really the model we have, the image we have of the world and ourselves and everything else, which is what we use as the framework for interpreting and understanding life and making our decisions, we want that to be as closely aligned with reality as possible. And so emotions are often expressions to us that something is wrong. Now, the same way I can go ahead and then try and, blame other people, blame the situation. Or I could step back and say, why am I being so emotional about this? What is it that I am so, unhappy about? What does that reflect in terms of what I believe? I believe about what? Believe about how things should be. Believe about how I should be. So emotions, again, intense emotions, we probably want to step back to the word that we used a little bit earlier, possibly decompress. Let me just take a step back, focus on the feeling, calm down. That can be true for positive emotions as well. Oftentimes we make the worst decisions when we are completely excited and elated because we don't think.
Wow, it can invite impulsiveness.
It involves impulsiveness. So any intense emotion, I would say to you, the general rule of thumb is enjoy it if it's nice, learn from it. If it's not, step back, calm things down.
It's funny because the word managing could imply doing something with them, but in what we are discussing is understand them. Doing means understand, hear them out, explore them, rather than do something and per se. It's interesting, different twist here completely. So
those things are all part of how we approach things with perspective for life. Again, it's not to say that we're the only ones who really understand things. Not at all. But I think one of the things that's the strength of the whole system is that it's coherent. In other words, it ties together well. So if I'm dealing with something here, it's not like I'm going to deal with something here and they don't line up. We can talk about emotions. We can talk about communication. We can talk about everything pertaining to, living life. And you see how the pieces fit. Why? Because reality fits. Reality aligns, which is why one of the things that makes us unhappy, there are only 6 things that make us unhappy. But the 4th one on the list of the mind map is when things don't line up. In other words, there's contradiction, there's hypocrisy. We know intuitively when something doesn't add up, I can't trust this. There's something wrong. Why? Because in reality, things make sense. They line up. We know that intuitively. That's why when we see those kinds of things aren't adding up. We're quick to go ahead and trying to figure it out, which means I'm trying to learn. And learning is the means by which we grow a perspective, as I said, hopefully in line with reality, so that growth and maturity that develops through the learning process, whether corrective on past thoughts or beliefs, whether additional to, growing a better understanding, whatever it's supposed to do, whether it's breaking certain parts down through realization, I was wrong, consolidating certain things. I've seen that enough times. I'm pretty certain, confident about that. All of these things, which work especially in relationships, because that's where we get to see who we truly are. It's easy to go ahead and live on your own. You're going to be lonely and other things, but you don't provoke yourself really. When you're with other people, there's a friction. And that is an opportunity again to learn and grow better together. But it's hard. And that's where
we discussed about how do we know. You can't directly measure reality, but you can see how close you are by seeing how surprised you are with outcomes.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So,
that's a great point.
We constantly are confused. Why is this happening to us? I mean, that's a clear indication. Wherever your decisions are coming from, they're clearly not taking into account a lot of things that would give you much better predictive power of what's going to come if I do this. Yeah. And you can even simulate this. We said that through mind map, where you can simulate can actually reverse engineering. We can actually show them how they got where they got.
Where it comes from, and I'll tell you where it's going.
But we also 100%. Can show them how if you chose this road, there's opportunity for very different and actually having. Now, that doesn't mean what's going to come, which you like or not, but we have now a choice to discuss the consequences that we want to accept or we don't want to accept. But at least it gives us a way better predictive power of what's going to happen with the choice. We make better decisions, honestly. We just make better decisions.
That's key.
Yeah.
So better together.
Where are we better together?
Make better decisions together. Not always easy.
Together. We're going to get better at this, so. Right?
Yeah. Cool. So I think we covered quite a bit there. Yes. Have you got any more questions? Are we doing one more? Not now.
Not now. Okay, next time.
Okay,
let's wrap up.
Thanks.
Take care, Ryan.